Say your right words,
the goblins said,
and we'll take the baby to the castle, and you will be free.
But the girl knew the Goblin King would keep the baby in his castle forever and ever and ever, and turn it into a goblin. Hello and welcome, my name's Ryan. Let's wander but try not to get lost in the corridors of the labyrinth as we take a book look at The Goblins of Labyrinth by Terry Jones and Brian Froud.
That's not it. Excellent, that rubbish.
When we first open the book, we have this fun stack of goblins ink and watercolor sketch on the title page. The Goblins of Labyrinth collects all of the labor, the sawdust of Brian Froud's many designs for the creatures in Jim Henson's 1986 cult classic film, The Labyrinth. In these following comparisons of the film to the scenes painted by Brian Froud, you can see how much influence he had on the production. We're given a view of the pre-production art for the multitude of goblins that appear throughout the film, with art appearing on nearly every page. Whether it's a little spot illustration pencil drawing, a full-page sketch, or a fully finished painting that appears as a spread. The book takes the form of a sort of bestiary, which has its origins in the medieval period. A bestiary is defined as a medieval allegorical or moralizing work on the appearance and habits of real or imaginary animals. The Goblins of Labyrinth has pieces of lore about each goblin, as well as letter and number indicators that are mimicking early scientific drawings, such as these examples by Leonardo da Vinci. If you're interested in taking a book look at the Goblins of Labyrinth yourself, check with your local library. I'll also leave a link below where you can get a copy. Rather than hearing from Brian Froud about his thoughts and design process of making these many weird and fantastic goblins, we're given a different voice.
I sat at my desk with Brian's drawings stacked on one side of the desk and writing away sort of to see what would happen. And every time I came to a new scene and I needed something to happen, I looked through Brian's drawings and found a character who was kind of speaking to me already. And suddenly there was the scene. It was wonderful. It was a strange way of collaborating because although Brian and I never sat down and worked together, it felt that that's what we were doing the whole time.
Terry Jones gives you these funny little descriptions of the role of each goblin depicted throughout this hefty 150-plus page book. Jones is responsible for giving us the initial screenplay after receiving a draft from Jim Henson and children's author Dennis Lee. The descriptions are absurd, witty, and irreverent, much as the Monty Python alumni Jones himself, and there's a connection between Jones's writing and the film. But in truth, the film that so many of us grew up knowing and loving is a chimera of writing talents. The Labyrinth shooting script was actually a collaborative effort that featured contributions from Jim Henson, George Lucas, Laura Phillips, Dennis Lee, and Elaine May. So the prose of the book probably doesn't feel like any of the other media that's come out of the world of Labyrinth. There's also a big part of me that wanted more notations and insights from the artist Brian Froud, as he was working on sketchbooks full of mischievous little goblins to let us into his head a bit more. The idea for the film was first discussed between Brian Froud and Jim Henson during a limousine ride after a special screening of their 1982 collaboration, The Dark Crystal. After Henson offered ideas that Froud didn't feel he knew enough about. But I know about goblins. Jim's face brightened, for of course, so did he. Great, he said, but this time, I want people in the film. I immediately pictured a baby surrounded by goblins. This was a rare occurrence, for normally, I have to search long and hard for images. I told Jim that traditionally goblins steal babies. That's the beginning of our story, but what else? Jim replied. I didn't know, but suggested that a labyrinth would make a really good metaphor for the soul's journey, and it started that simply. I came back to England and painted Toby and the Goblins. This piece defined and inspired the next 3 years' worth of work on Labyrinth. The baby in the film was played by my son Toby, who was conceived after I painted the picture. The painting hung in Jim's house in London for many years after completion of the film. Brian Froud from The Goblins of Labyrinth afterward. In the film, Sarah is portrayed by a 14-year-old Jennifer Connelly. You can see some of Froud's renditions of Sarah amongst the world of the goblins in several paintings prior to Connelly's being cast. Here we have the book's dedication, for Jim Henson, who led us through the labyrinth. There is so much that can be said of the cultural impact of Jim Henson. He was a genius and innovator of his time. I doubt you would find a single contemporary puppeteer or puppet builder that wasn't influenced by his work. So many artists, writers, and filmmakers were also shaped by the imagination of Jim Henson. From Sesame Street, The Muppets, The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, and many others. The vision of Jim Henson left an impression on the next generation of creators. The art of The Goblins of Labyrinth helps us connect to the grandeur and complexity of a big-budget feature film. to just a casual conversation between two creatives brainstorming, to a lone artist in his studio making pages and pages of art on subject matter he loves, Goblins. Do you have other books that you think should have a book look? Let me know down in the comments below. Click on the first video for another book look, and to walk further into Labyrinth, click the second playlist. You can find even more Labyrinth videos in the description and pinned comment. And if you want to discover new worlds between the covers of books, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for future book looks.